Hello, intrepid followers, subscribers, and watchers of the YouTube video. It's another cosplay in the Geekfort. And today's guest is AbiSue Cosplay. Hello, AbiSue.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm doing good today. How about you?
I'm doing great. I see you brought your executive producer with you.
I have indeed. This one is Diana.
Aw.
She likes to hang out with me when I'm recording, and then the other one's trying to get at us. She's Beanie down there.
Excellent. Always good to have your group with you just in case they need to help you get things, right?
Exactly.
Well, let's start with the question, of course, which is always the first question I start with is, what led you to start cosplaying?
So I began making cosplay costumes in 2009, about 12 years ago. And I had made costumes from time to time before that, but I hadn't heard of cosplay specifically until my brothers asked if I wanted to attend Sakura Con 2009 with them. So I looked into the convention and I got really excited about cosplay costumes that I was seeing. And I wanted to make one to wear to my first convention. So my first one was Twilight Princess Zelda, a difficult one to choose as your very first one. I really liked the look of her dress and the fact that she's tall like me. So I was like, ooh, this seems like a good one. And so I had found a foam armor making tutorial blog post online at the time. I mean, this was way back in 2009, so there wasn't a whole lot. You kind of had to look around. There wasn't as much as there is now. So I I wanted to give that a try. So I hand painted the tabard on the front of her costume, and I also hand painted the gold scroll work on the hem of the dress. And I really didn't choose the best fabric for the white, as I later found out it wanted to static cling to me. And it was also really difficult to hand paint. So for a first costume, it turned out really well, even though it had its problems. And I did wear it for quite a few years. And then, I fixed it up a couple times, and then I fixed it up to sell it to a friend.
There was so even the shoulders, were those also foam work, or was that plastic, or did you buy?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's definitely craft foam. So the tutorial had you do this thing where you used like watered down PVA glue, which is pretty much just white glue, like craft glue or whatever. Um, and that's how you sealed it. I know there's better ways now, but that's how you did it back then. So you use that glue. I think I used that and wood glue back and forth a little bit. And then you were supposed to like layer you glue some fabric to the inside of it to make it stiffer or something. And like I hand cut out all of like the scroll work and then like hand like glued it on there. And I think yeah, you use like a heat gun to like heat it up and like shape it around something. I think I had paper towels at the time, so I shaped it around the paper towels. And then like you like attach it around the edges. I think honestly, I never really trusted glue, so I would like sew through the craft foam to get it to stay around the edges.
Whoa, sewing through craft foam. That's impressive. That must have been
I do
scary to
that all the
do. Oh,
time.
really? Oh, wow.
Yes. So I don't trust the glue to stay, so I actually sew along the edges of things sometimes from the inside, even though I know craft foam would like tear in a lot of places with thread. Like if you do enough little pieces, it kind of helps it stay along with the glue. So I kind of do that a lot. Trust sewing more than I do glue. You seal that with the craft glue concoction, like many layers, and then you had to put like it's almost like a waxy gold uh something or other you get it at like Joann's. Oh, it's called Rub and Buff. I did was used little Q-tips to spread this waxy gold around the whole thing. So I spread it along and then you buff it at the end with like a paper towel. And you can do a couple layers. And that's how the gold
Wow.
happened.
That must have been intense back then compared to things nowadays.
Yeah, Warbler is so much easier.
Yay for Warbler.
I mean, I know there's a lot of craft foam tutorials that are like way easier than that nowadays, and they look so professional. But back then, that's all I had, and wasn't it wasn't easy to make it look professional.
Well, it looks great in the two pictures you sent over. Especially, I love the picture where you're spinning in the snow, and just how
Yeah.
the dress blooms out like that. It's so pretty. Now, when it came to that edging on the very bottom of the dress, was that hard, or
Mhm.
was that easy to put all that onto that applique and stuff?
So that part was fairly easy-ish. So the bottom strip is just a strip of the magenta, well, kind of pinkish magenta fabric that the bodice is made out of. It's just I sandwiched the hem with that, or I think I like
Oh,
sewed it, flipped it, and sewed it again type thing. And then the scroll work pink bit pinned those in place along, and then there was a second set pinned along because it's kind of like S curves. So there's like two sets of S curves that are pinned along each other. And then I think I just hand sewed that in place. And then I had to hand paint well, it wasn't paint, I think I used a gold leafing pen, which made it even worse because it's got like those fibers. So I did that for the gold scroll work bit. And I think I just kind of the fabric is a little bit see-through, so I put a pattern underneath and just like drew it on there like that. Some mistakes along the bodice area that I had to fix, and I like put a ribbon there to fix the seam, but it worked out.
it looks amazing, especially that movement. Even though you're static, or you're caught in a movement, if the way it just moves makes it look wonderful too.
Yeah, the photographer was just like really good at catching like movement like that because I wanted that specific shot and it worked, and I was like, this is so cool.
Cool. So that was your first cosplay. What is your
Mhm.
favorite part of cosplaying though? Like, what do you think you like the most about it?
So I really love the making part, but I also really love the reactions to wearing a really interesting costume. So, the kids get so awestruck and stuff. I feel like making cosplay and wearing cosplay are almost like two different hobbies. It takes a lot of time and effort to like research and create the costumes, and then it also takes a lot of time to get into the costume and get your makeup like the character and wear the wig or do your hair like them and learn what poses work for the character. So for me, I feel like it's those two aspects. I really love making the costumes, and then when that's over, it's like an entirely different thing where you're then doing all this research and then getting into the costume. So I like both aspects of that. And then on that note, for many years, I had my hair dyed to work for Rogue Costumes. She was my favorite character, obviously, and kind of still is. So it did make things easier. Once I moved to the red hair, I made sure to have several elaborate wigs and hair pieces that work for her various costumes that I now have. So I think I sent you a couple pictures of Rogue, and there's a couple with me with my old natural hair, and then there's one with me with my giant 90s era wig that I made. But I also have a wig that like looks like my old natural hair, and then I have like a clip-in bang if I wanted to just use my red hair. I kind of like all those kind of aspects.
Cool. So then what would you say has been the most ambitious cosplay you've created?
So I have created quite a few ambitious cosplays over the years. My most recent one would be my historically accurate Italian Renaissance ever after court dress that was worn by Drew Barrymore in the 1998 movie Ever After. So that's my current favorite. There's so many like layers that that went into it that I created, and I had to like hand draft all the patterns, and it takes a lot of work to put the costume on. but like I'm really excited to be able to finally like wear her to a convention soon. So if Emerald City actually does happen in December, I'll probably wear her to that convention.
So then you say, what was the most ambitious part of it? Was it doing all those layerings, or was it the patterning itself that made it ambitious for you?
So it's kind of all that. I had to learn about Italian Renaissance and the kind of how to make it accurate. So it's 1490s Italian Renaissance specifically because the sleeves and the items are in Italian. So the chemise is called a camizia, and that's the bottom layer. It's just a linen shift essentially, but it's got huge sleeves, like really giant. And I had to redo the neckline like 4 or 5 times, and I was hand sewing it. So that was fun because I was creating the pattern from a blog post. So I was doing math and stuff, and I got it wrong quite a few times. If I was using like a normal pattern, I wouldn't have gotten it wrong that many times. But it's like this giant thing that you had to like gather down into a whole smaller area, and I just kept getting the measurements wrong because I was doing it on myself. And then the second layer up is the one that's like the bodice. Originally, I had made stays to go over that, but that era didn't have. You don't know what they wore because there isn't anything that lasted from that time period. They assume it was either built into the bodice or they had some kind of stays that they used or pair of bodies. So I was using my Regency stays and I found out that they kind of showed. So I after I had built almost all the whole costume because I had already boned the underbodice, which is I can't remember the Italian name for that, but there's the Giornia and then um the overdress. I think the Giornia is I don't remember. It's just Italian. It's a lot of Italian. You have to like look it up by the Italian words so that you
Oh,
can find
wow.
pictures of it. It's very annoying. But so the underdress is boned and 3 layers, I think, of fabric. So there's light boning, and it's tight and it ties up the sides. And that's how they would have done it back then. So there's like some space down um, by your hips, so you could actually like pull the overdress back and like stick your hands in those slits to pockets, which I haven't made yet, but I will. And then I'll have pockets. But I found that because I had lightly boned the bodice that I didn't need the stays. And that is another way that they tended to do it back then. It's because the waistline is so far up, it's like having like a medieval bra essentially. And then the overdress is pretty much the same pattern, just with a V-neck in the front, and then it laces up the back. So thankfully, it was kind of the same, just like a little bit of edits. And then the
Cool.
arms were kind of annoying because they were a little too tight, and I just don't care and just deal. I just deal. And then with all the layers on, it's kind of warm. So I definitely won't be wearing it during the summer. There's a lot of historical costumers that have already done the deep dives. So I really just had to kind of look around for their articles. I know that sometimes articles aren't exactly the best way to get the information, but a lot of them have already done the research. So I kind of feel like there's an element of don't take as much time trying to do your own research when somebody else has already done it.
Exactly. If they've already done the research and they've got it written listed so you can see it and go, okay, she's got
I'm good. I'm
I
good.
just need to know the sentence of what that means.
Yes. Which I do.
Cool. So you said there was one or two more that you thought were your most ambitious. What were those?
Yeah. So the previous ambitious ones would be probably movie version Wonder Woman and movie version Sif, both because the armor and the leatherwork involved had me learning new techniques, and they're just kind of impressive costumes to wear, I would say.
So
So
tell
yeah.
me more about the Wonder Woman then. What was the part that was about that? Was it just in general the armor work and leather work, or was there a specific part of it that?
I feel like it was because I hadn't worked with leather as much before that. I mean, I had a little bit with Sif, but it was a lot more involved, and I had to make the patterns for all that. And the Wonder Woman corset itself, I had to do all the little bits out of craft foam first, because I didn't want to do like the punched leather type thing. I just wanted to lay thinner leather over the top and make it look like it was thicker leather. So I really made a corset, and it attaches on the sides with like magnets and like hooks. And then put I glued all the craft foam pieces to the corset while it was on a body form. And then I put the leather over the top of that and hand sewed in all the ditches. So that was difficult, but I needed it to go into those ditches so that you could see the 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 detail. And then I think I actually did some dry brush like black paint in those ditches too, so you could see it better. And then the armor goes on top of that, which is Warbler um, armor, which some of the paint has been cracking recently, but with how long I've had that costume, it's held up pretty good. And
Cool.
then like the skirt is leather too, so that was some more leather work.
And with Sith, how much with Lady Sif was that the same thing where you were doing a bodice and overlay with leather, or was it different kind of?
So it was ish. The leather was just the skirt attached to like an underbodice kind of thing, so it was all one piece. Um, and I think I hand sewed all of that together. I actually cut up an old leather coat to make that, and attached the Warbler bits with various ways. I think it was like snaps and gluing it on and that kind of thing. But I also learned how to make chainmail for that. So I made a chainmail skirt to go under the skirt, and then there was this chainmail like dicky right here for the little bit that shows at the top. So that was a lot of handwork with wire. But yeah, it was the same kind of thing where there's a lot of snaps and warbler and leather in layers, but it wasn't exactly a corset. It was more like armor that kind of is like a corset, but it like sits differently because it's higher up, and it doesn't have to like keep you in necessarily. And I didn't fit it as well as I did the Wonder Woman corset because I didn't know as much about it then. It fits better on the front than it does on the back. And then it like buckles on the sides, kind of like, you know, breastplates do.
Cool. And what about the with your Lady Sif? I noticed you have a sword and a shield. Did you purchase those or have
Mhm.
someone make those, or did you do that yourself?
So I made the shield and I purchased, well, actually, I had a friend who loaned me the Sif sword. It's Core Geek. And he loaned it to me for so long that he just told me to keep it. Because my brother was supposed to make me one and it never happened. And it was his display sword. So he was very kind and let me keep the sword. So that was really nice of him. And then the shield was a whole lot of handwork with layers and layers of craft foam. And then I sandwiched. So it was like the back um, was one piece that I sandwiched Warbler onto the back. And then the front is all the layers of Warbler with, or sorry, craft foam with Warbler over the top that I had to push into all the little crannies. And then I glued both of those sandwiches together with
Cool. That's
barges,
impressive.
I think.
Oh, yeah.
And I think
With
I made a
barge.
chainmail for that too. It was very, very tiny chainmail.
It
Very
does,
tiny.
looking just at the chainmail that's up there at your chest, and then also on along the legging there. That's really tiny as it is. So,
I was gonna find my tiny little chainmail purse that I made with the same links, but I can't find it right now. But
oh,
I have
bummer.
this tiny little chainmail purse that I made over the pandemic.
Oh,
It's probably behind me, but it's like
that's okay.
this tiny little chainmail purse out of the same like I think
Links
they're
and wire.
1/4 inch links or
Oh,
something,
wow.
but they're really hard to do. But I did it first on the Sif shield, so
Oh.
It was
Yeah.
that was the most ambitious part of that costume, honestly, that shield.
Well, just the chainmail alone is ambitious, but to then put it onto the shield too, that's like, whoa.
I think I just glued it on. I was like, I don't know how to get this to stay, so glue.
Oh, the
The shoes,
shoes.
I could not run in those. Those hurt. They hurt.
Those
They're
are, I
wedges, but
can't,
they hurt.
oh, they are wedges. I was gonna ask, are they wedges or what they were? Oh my gosh. So is
So
it
in
just
the
regular shoes
movie,
you just added to, or what did you make to make those?
usually yes, but for this particular one, I found ones that were like calf height. So I I sewed and attached a similar color fake leather
Mm,
along with Warbler as the topper bit. So it was nice to have a base shoe for this one that I didn't have to just make everything. But they're also the most uncomfortable shoes that I have for cosplay. So that that was great. I know in the movie she has flat boots for some of the moving parts, but I didn't want to do that, and I should have. Pretty shoes and a whole lot of shoes that hurt. There are some comfortable ones. There are some. Like I make boot covers a lot, and I have this one pair of heels that's the most comfortable heels, and I have boot covers like 5 or 6 or 10 that fit that pair of shoes, and I have had to replace those shoes. I've found exact or almost similar 3 times now, I think. I don't know.
that's
It,
cool.
I get them on sale at
Nice.
DSW, and somehow I've found them 3 times.
That's awesome. So you gotta have a stock of them just in case.
I think I still have 2 that are working order
Well,
right
that's good.
now.
I think it's great though that you came up with a functional shoe that works, that you just have to put an overlay on. So you don't have to worry about
Mhm.
having like a shoe just for this cosplay and a shoe just for this cosplay and a shoe for like you like minimize, like you work smarter, not harder.
I still have a lot of shoes that are just for certain costumes, but at least for the spandex costumes, I have that.
Oh,
It's
that's
something.
important. Yes, that's good. That's good. So what would
Uh,
you say, you've talked about your most ambitious, but what is your
mhm.
favorite cosplay that you've made so far that you really love to wear and be in?
I mean, I probably would always say 90s Rogue because I put so much effort and time into her. Like, I always have new costumes that are my most favorite. Every time I make a new costume, it's my most favorite. It feels like, you know? But I think long standing would probably be 90s Rogue because I've actually redone every piece of her like once, yeah, once, but I've also had to re-sew bits and repair and all that. Um, and I need to wash her again because I do wash her quite often, but you know, I think the last time I wore her, I forgot to wash her, so I need to do that. But at least she's washable. But originally I had made all the leather bits out of fake leather, and then I did a real leather coat, the same pattern, and real leather for the belt eventually. I made all that stuff, but it just kind of, I also upgraded the spandex that I used and the way that I sewed it together as I was going along because I made my pattern for that like out of math and a blog post because 2009. But I upgraded that pattern over and over the years and figured out better and better ways to sew it together. So by the time I redid Rogue, I had better fabric and better sewing techniques and a better pattern. So she is the better pattern now. And then I found that using uh, what is it, Velcro to keep the boot covers up is bad because it sticks to the spandex, especially in the wash. Yeah, so that was horrible. I learned that a lot. It still worked, but it did mean that I got some snags on my old costume. And then I also sandwiched the craft foam at the top of the spandex boot covers and sewed around the edges of that instead of just having the one layer. It worked a lot better and it looked better. And then there's snaps that keep that to the suit instead of the Velcro. The snaps are much better. They're like, God, they're huge. I think they're like almost 1 inch. They're heavy duty. They're not going anywhere. And I think I upgraded the pattern for that so it fit a little better. The bottoms of the boots were still the same because I have this I found it at Harbor Freight a long time ago. It's just like it's sticky stuff that's meant for steps. It's just like a rubber matting that's meant for steps or whatever, and it's got sticky on the back. The sticky doesn't work. I have to hand sew around the whole edges to get it to stay. Like gluing it doesn't work. Nothing stays for very long. So Jerica learned that, and she has me hand sew hers as well. It's needed. I learned that because the spandex just kind of like falls apart if you walk on it too much. So I have this treaded rubber that I put on the bottom of every single one of them. Like I use the sticky stuff to keep it there while I hand sew it. And then it works. And then the bodysuit itself went through a change as well. Like the original one, I layered the yellow over the green. For this one, I did 2 layers of yellow and 1 of green because the yellow is see-through. So you kind of have to do 2 layers or a thicker. It's one or the other. And I liked the shiny wet look spandex that was the new stuff that I had had. They didn't have the right color in the green, so I actually had to dye that to get the right green. But yeah, everything was upgraded pretty much. So I still like wearing her.
Well, it looks great. I definitely like it too. I think it's definitely one. I think it's actually when I first met you was the one that was what you were wearing when I first met you was
It's
the
probably true. I wear it a lot.
great costume. It's great cosplay. So let me ask you this: if you're hitting an obstacle to creating, what helps you motivate you to keep going?
I usually have a fair amount of motivation just because I like creating things. But I found that I pivot to a different type of project when I'm just not feeling the one in front of me. And then I usually have a few different things going on at once, sometimes machine sewing, sometimes hand sewing, and it kind of helps to have a variety. And I also changed the type of costuming I was doing when the pandemic started. I went from making the spandex superheroes and the like the armor suits and that kind of stuff to historical dresses. So I had like a massive amount of research that I had in front of me to do for the historical dresses, and then there was like all the layers that went into it, and the corset. I hadn't done corsets before, so it was just like all this new stuff that was really interesting that I could focus on instead of my lack of motivation. And then I also have everyday clothes that I wear and that I make here and there. I think I sent you a picture of like my embroidered dress that I made. So I do that as well. Like I get like super inspired on Pinterest and just like pin a whole bunch of like couture dresses that I'm like, ooh, I want to make that. Ooh, I want to make that. Ooh, I want to make that. So I do a lot of that too. And the embroidered dress was actually me learning to make a pattern. I draped that pattern um, and then I did like all the hand embroidery on that with silk ribbon. I learned how to do that for that dress. And then I think all of that's silk, but it's like silk chiffon, so it's really difficult to sew.
You're talking about the roses and the appliques. That's what you're talking about when you said the lacing. You said
So the roses and appliques are the silk ribbon, and the green fabric is the silk chiffon, which is actually layered over a white habitai silk as a lining layer. So it's kind of complicated, and I did it using like the couture sewing methods that I learned for that. There's a lot of layering that goes into that, and hand sewing. But I wanted to do something like that to kind of test my pattern because I wanted to make my wedding dress. And that's what I recently got to wear was my wedding dress that I made and finished right before the pandemic started. So the pictures I sent you of my wedding dress, I had made using mostly the pattern that I had made to create the embroidered dress. You know, wedding dresses really do tend to use couture sewing methods. So doing the embroidered dress first really kind of helped me figure out what ways to do it, because the wedding dress has so many more layers and a lot more like structure involved to get it to do all that stuff. And I think I had to hand sew and hand lay the bodice lace on top. That's usually what they do for wedding dresses, honestly. That's why they're so expensive, because there's a lot of hand sewing and hand pinning and hand laying involved.
So let's talk more about some of your period dresses. Tell me more about some of these other
Mhm.
ones.
So I think I sent you a few photos. The first time period that I decided to go with was Edwardian, which is like Anne of Green Gables, the beginning of Downton Abbey, that kind of stuff. Anne of Green Gables I grew up with, so that was kind of my first inspiration. I was like, ooh, I want to make something Anne of Green Gables. I have the hair. Let's do this. Um, so I did the pink dress first, which was a late Victorian Edwardian walking skirt that I modified a pattern for to make it more historically accurate. And I made the corset and the underlayers first, and then I made a I think there's two petticoats under there. The skirt itself was intended to be another petticoat for like ball gowns and stuff if I needed it, because sometimes they have a third petticoat. So I can use that as a petticoat if I wanted to, but it probably won't. But I have two petticoats under there, plus the chemise and the drawers and the corset that I made all of that stuff. And then the shirt waist is it uses a whole bunch of lace that was hand done by a, let's see, my mom's friend's mother, and her friend gave it to her for her wedding, and then mom gave it to me for my wedding, and it had never been used, and it was just hand done lace. So I decided to get matching cotton, which was kind of an off white color, and just use it to make an Edwardian shirtwaist, because there was just enough to make that shirtwaist. I made sure to use all the pieces of the lace because I just wanted to. And there's like some pin tucks in there, and there's just a lot involved in that shirt. And then I had just enough of the pink skirt fabric to make a jacket. And I knew I didn't have enough for the sleeves because the sleeves are always giant. Actually, I think late Victorian is when those giant sleeves happened. So I went a little bit outside of the historical, but I didn't really care because it was Anne of Green Gables too, and she liked big sleeves. And I think she probably would have kept using them after they were fashionable. I think Edwardian era did have some larger sleeves, but the poofs started to go down to the bottom of the sleeve. But it really doesn't matter. I'd say early 1900s is kind of the Edwardian, and it's close enough. So I found some cotton velvet to use for those giant sleeves for the jacket. So it back then they kind of did that because I think the reasoning was they could reformulate each piece to fit the next style, and you could change out the sleeves easier than you could change out an entire dress. So that's kind of why sometimes the lapels and sleeves are like out of different fabric or like velvet, because then you could just make a new one and not have to like completely get rid of the skirt and jacket.
That sounds like a reasonable thing to do. Like, so let's talk about the green dress, that beautiful, beautiful
Mhm.
green dress.
So that was the second one I did. That is all silk habitai, which I was unsmart to use habitai because it is very thin and very hard to cut. But I liked the color and I didn't want to spend massive amounts of money on silk. So, so really what I did was I underlaid a whole bunch of cotton under the green silk habitai, and it just I um attached them along the edges with basting stitches, and they just act as one piece essentially. Like they act as one fabric. So that's how you make the fabrics thicker. That's not only a couture technique, but it's also a historical technique. That's how you like thicken up your skirts as well, even if the skirt fabric's kind of thick. I actually did that with I think it's called interlining. I did that with pretty much all of the skirts that I've made just to make them flow better. That's kind of what you did in the Edwardian, because they have kind of a stiffer look, and then they have like even fabric around the hem to keep the hem out. And you can also replace it if it like gets all gross from trailing along the ground. And that's also what I did for the green ball gown is I made what's called a balayage that attaches to the underside of the hem. It's just a whole bunch of like ruffles that like trail along the ground, and you can like unbutton it and throw it in the wash and then button it back on, and you're not screwing up your skirt hem.
So what about the belt?
Yeah.
What is the belt? How'd you make that beautiful belt on it?
So that is, I think, silk charmeuse, and I did the layering thing with the interlining again, and then I just hand sewed all the beads onto that. Just I was looking at it kind of a historical dress to kind of get a bit of an idea of a pattern to put onto the belt. So I have something I was kind of following, but I put my own twist on it and my own colors. But that belt was one of my favorites to hand bead, and it's just really intricate and it's really pretty. And I want to wear it with everything.
Now, what about those? Looks like, what is that sort of gold like comb work or hash that's on the arms of it? What is that called? That
Oh, okay. So that's like it's kind of like ruching or something.
oh, okay,
Maybe it's not, but it's really just gathering. So the way you get puffed sleeves to like gather like that and stay in place is you kind of have to create a fitted sleeve. Um, so I created a fitted sleeve out of just like cotton, and then I put the chiffon over the top of it. So like I got chiffons that's in the same color as the habitai. So it's the same color, but it's a different type of silk. So it's I was because Dharma Trading Company has like a whole bunch of silks in the same color, but it's a couple different styles. I was able to do that, which is really nice. So you then I had a puffed sleeve that I then gathered and attached to the bottom and then attached in the middle. So it was kind of like there's like this cuff area, and all of that is just fake pearls that I hand sewed over the gathering. And that's kind of why there's that hatching work kind of look, and it also keeps the gathers in place. So it's like a two-pronged thing. And then like I attached lace around the under as well so that it had like that extra color pop.
cool. Now you said the name of a place. What was the name of that place you got the nice from? You said
So it's called Dharma Trading Company, and it has like it's where I get my linen. It's where I get some of my colored silks, like the embroidered dress. I got the silk chiffon from there, and the habitai, and like that green Edwardian dress is pretty much almost all fabrics. All the colored fabrics is from Dharma Trading Company.
cool. We'll put a link to the
Yeah.
description down below to that website. So if anyone else wants to use it, they can.
It's a really great place to get cheaper silks and linens
Cool.
because they're meant to be dyed from there, but I
Oh,
don't usually dye them. But most of their stuff is white so that you can dye them.
oh,
But then they
interesting.
have this set of colored silks that I really love because there's a lot of pretty colors.
Cool. It's a really great green. I love it. It's very like emerald, you know.
Yes, it's one of my favorite greens.
Now, what about that purse? Did you make that purse too?
That purse I did not make. I wish I had.
Oh.
I found it on Poshmark.
Nice.
It's like I think it's like a Mary Frances purse that was a little expensive, but I was just like, I need it.
It works
And
great with the
on
outfit.
Poshmark, it's less expensive. So
Oh,
I
it
was
is?
like,
Okay.
I'm going to splurge on this because it's really like people selling their old stuff. So you
Okay.
can find brand
Cool.
name stuff for less. So
Nice.
I wish I had made that.
It's very pretty. It works great with the outfit. Like, and it works great for
Yeah.
that era. Like, it definitely is like that kind of the
Yeah.
era kind of thing that a woman
I
would
was
definitely
like,
carry stuff in.
exactly. I'm assuming it's actually probably like the Mary Frances line is like an older line.
Oh,
So
okay.
I don't
Hmm.
think they're from Edwardian era, probably not, but I'm guessing like 60s.
So that's really great that you had these two Edwardian pieces. Now you also sent me a picture of something that looks like it's from a late earlier era. Is that Regency era?
Yes, that is Regency. And honestly, I've done a whole bunch of historical Regency, like historically accurate Regency before that. But that particular dress is actually a cosplay because I did that for Bridgerton's, the Netflix show. Because Bridgerton's isn't exactly historically accurate. Um, they're kind of like modern fabrics, but in historical patterns ish. So, what I wanted to do with the Bridgertons was because they have that family of sisters that's all red hair. So, I was like, yep, that's me. So, I found one of their ball gowns in, like, I think it was the final episode that I really liked because it was pink and green. And when I went to the LA Fashion District, I found like I think it was like a synthetic silk green for the underlayer because I didn't want to spend crap tons of money on just a dress. Sometimes I do. Don't get me wrong, but it was an underlayer, so I'm like, I don't need it to be real silk if it's an underlayer. Um, and then the overlayer is a beaded pink lace fabric. So layering them together gives you that pop of green underneath. And then I also hand placed a whole bunch of flowers on the bodice and then on the hem. So there's hand placed, and then there's beads in those flowers that I sewed the flowers onto with. So because Bridgerton's is just like over the top, it's Regency era, but it's like so modern in like it's got like almost the couture like dress look, which I really love. But even real like historical Regency had a lot of like embellishments, so it wouldn't have been far out to have something like that. Um, but probably not the pre-done hand the pre-done lace. It would have been like lace that they hand attached things to, and it probably would have been beaded and not the flowers. If it had been flowers, it would have been more like ribbons or some kind of fabric that they sewed on because they didn't have the pre-cut flowers back then either. So, but I kind of liked the idea that I made the dress using my more historical pattern, um, but with the kind of Bridgerton twist. And they didn't have bonnets in Bridgerton, but yeah, I made the bonnet and it matches the garishness of the dress. And then I think I also made the purse that I am carrying, which is just similar to making the dress. But there's like two layers sewn together like as one piece, and it's just like crazy because all that beading fabric, like you have to take all the beads off the edges in order to sew it because it won't go through your machine otherwise.
But it looks great. I mean, it looks amazing.
Thank you.
So I can't wait to see it at a con if you get to bring it to a con. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
since it is technically cosplay, I'll probably wear it to a con.
So with those that you've already made, is there one that you're working on right now and another one you're working on, or is that where you're at with your cosplays right
Yes,
now?
I'm always working on something new. um, so silly me decided to go with another historical era. It's very similar, so I can reuse the petticoats. But I'm doing 1890s, so that's late Victorian. So the HBO's The Nevers kind of inspired me. They're 1890s kind of late Victorian stuff. So I really wanted to do one of their ball gowns. So I've already started and I finished the late Victorian corset, and next I'll be doing some linen underlayers, like some under things or whatever, just because my other Edwardian stuff is like it's a cotton blend, so it's not as breathable. It was at the beginning of the pandemic. I just used whatever was there. So now I have this cheaper linen from uh, Dharma. So I'm going to make some nice linen under things that I can use for that. But yeah, it's similar to the Edwardian, but it's different because 1890s, late Victorian, they had kind of a little bit more fitted of a walking skirt, and the bustle was a bit bigger. It wasn't a bustle, but they had a little bit more padding around the hips and butt than the Edwardian period has. And the corset is a little different, obviously, because the Edwardians have the S bend kind of look, whereas the late Victorian is more like just regular corset. Usually, late Victorian is what people are used to seeing for corsets. So it's that regular like hourglass figure kind of corset. Um, and they didn't have as much of the pigeon breast that Edwardian has. So I can actually reuse a lot of my Edwardian stuff and restyle it as um, 1890s Victorian. So it'd be really easy. Just use the different corset and tuck in the shirt instead of letting it poof out with the corset cover. So yeah, because the walking skirts are very similar. They had a similar kind of style, just like 1890s is a little more fitted in the hips, and it has like it looks like it has a bit of a longer train than I'm used to, but I'm probably just going to make the same skirt with a little bit of edits. But the bodice is what's different. It's fitted um, to the corset, like it's like another corset almost. It's kind of weird. Like it's kind of boned and like I think it's hooked in the back, and like obviously they have bigger puffs on the sleeves in the 1890s. So yeah, I'm not sure if I'm actually going to do puff sleeves though. I might just do like they had in the Nevers where she just didn't have any sleeves.
Cool. That's
That
awesome
era.
that you're working on that. That's neat. That's like a whole nother area. Like I think it's great that you've challenged yourself in a way that's different. Like you said earlier, you transitioned from doing more like superhero costumes and like Star Trek stuff and like things like that
Hmm.
to doing these like dresses that are like a different kind of challenge for you, you know?
Yeah, I really kind of like it.
So what's one like product or one thing that you found that's really helped you the most in creating all these different cosplays?
I don't have like one product. I think I would just say my sewing machines because they do a lot of hard work for me. So I have a Juki regular sewing machine, and I have a Baby Lock. Yeah, it's a no, actually it's not. It's a brother. It's a brother Serger. And then I also have a small travel sewing machine that I use when like I don't want to take out my bigger machines or uh one of them breaks down, which has happened before. Yeah, I mean I've gone through I think in the time I've been cosplaying, this is my third regular machine.
So what's the difference between a serger and a sewing machine? Is there like a big difference? Like, can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so a serger really just kind of overlocks your edges, the fabric edges, so that you don't have to do anything to cover the raw edges. Like it helps when like making different garments really quickly. Some people say that you can use it to make spandex garments really quickly, but honestly, I don't trust serger thread to not break on its own. And I don't feel like you need to overlock the spandex because it doesn't come apart on the inside. So I have a 3-step zigzag on my regular machine that I trust over a serger stitch. But the serger actually really just helps me with speed. It helps with all the finishing seams and stuff. I honestly still use it for some of my historical stuff too when I really don't care about historical accuracy on the inside. I'm just like, serge everything. I mean, my corsets are all have serged edges. I'm just like, whatever. I don't have to finish it. I don't have fraying fabric all over the place. I serged it. So it's a useful thing, but it's expensive, so it's not really necessary. It's just like a time saver, is what
So
it
if
is.
you're starting off sewing or you're starting off to do cosplay or sewing, don't feel like you need to like buy a serger. You're going to be just fine with the ability to do a
It's
sewing machine that's got
too
multiple.
complicated.
Mhm.
If you're starting out, a serger is so complicated. You have to thread 4 threads, and if it screws up, you have to rethread the whole thing. It's kind of annoying. So if you're a new cosplayer, you don't want to have to deal with that stuff.
That
So
makes
just a
sense. Yeah.
regular sewing machine is just easy.
Which goes into my question about advice for new cosplayers. Would you say that's some good advice when it comes to that kind of stuff, or is there some other advice you'd want to give someone new?
I would say, yeah, some of that was good advice for new cosplayers because honestly, there are a lot of costumers that get on their high horses about their big machines and the stitches that they use and all that crazy stuff. And it's like, you can use a cheap machine to make the most intricate costume. You can hand sew a costume. I have. I mean, you don't have to have a machine even. And you don't have to have the most expensive fabrics. Like you don't have to do silk and satin. You can do the synthetic stuff. But that was a tangent from what I originally was going to say. It's still good. But the other aspect is to just have fun and that anyone can cosplay anything they want. There's always like drama in any community, but for a new cosplayer, don't let it keep you from making or buying or wearing that super awesome costume that you've always wanted to do because it's the enthusiasm that you feel for the character that matters, not the drama that surrounds everything online. Like, honestly, there's more drama online than there is in person, for reals. Like, there's a lot of cattiness that happens. And I'd rather just be by myself or with my friends sometimes just because
And that's the
the
best community to
community is
have
hard.
is that small little group of people that you love to cosplay with.
And honestly, my first couple conventions, I went by myself. I didn't have friends. I made the costumes and I hung out and people took pictures and I was a little lonely, but I hung out in panels in my little costumes. But I made friends over time. It took a while, but don't let loneliness and going by yourself deter you from going, you know.
So speaking of cons, what has been your favorite con you've been to?
Let's see. I really loved Dragon Con when I went. I think it was in 2017. Gosh, I don't remember the actual date. It might have been that. It was when Jericho went. So we both went together. But I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago. But it was such a unique experience for a con. It was just like a party all the time. And you don't like a lot of people will bring their more elaborate costumes, but most of the time you bring a costume to party in. So the smaller costumes that fit in the suitcase or like the campy costume or just like the funny thing rather than the most elaborate thing in the world. But there still are like a ton of elaborate costumes there. It's just really hot. So I used my smallest costumes. I think I did Savage Lands Rogue and Cheerleader Rogue. Just anything that I could beat the heat in.
So what con would you love to attend? What's a con you haven't attended or you've attended before that you love that you'd want to attend again?
So, there was a time when I would have said Comic-Con International in San Diego, but I don't really know when it's going to be safe to go to larger events. And honestly, I'm not as big of a fan of huge crowds anymore. So it may have been a con that I would have loved to go to, and you never know, I may still go to it in the future, but it's so hard to get tickets, and it sounds like a lot of work. But now I would say I'm looking at a lot of historical conventions rather than cosplay conventions that I would really love to try. And there's a bigger one in California called Costume College that I would really love to try. There are some people that wear cosplays there, I've noticed, but it's usually like a lot of different historical era costumes that everybody walks around in. And there's like panels, kind of like, costume or comic conventions. It's just a historical convention, but there's a lot of sewists there, so I thought it would be fun to give that one a try sometime. I think there's actually a Regency event in Bath that would be really fun to go to as well. I don't know when that's ever going to happen because, I don't think we're allowed to fly over there right now, but I wouldn't want to go anyway.
Right. But it would be a
I'd be so
dream to
scared.
go. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
someday when
Yeah.
things are better.
Yeah. Totally.
I would love to go to that.
Totally. Well, that sounds cool. I think that's amazing to want to try because of what you've learned, that you realize you've also found out there's other kinds of conventions out there. There's not comic book or
Mhm.
anime conventions. There's something out there for everyone. So I think it's really cool that you found
Oh
something
yeah.
else to try and get into and see. All right. So last question is, what is one charity or organization that is doing good in the world right now that you would like people to know more about?
Yeah, I would say Camp Good Times. It's a great organization. They are called the Good Times Project online. So, the Good Times Project is a nonprofit dedicated to raising money for and producing programs that support the children, siblings, and families in Washington and Alaska dealing with pediatric cancer. So I've worked with them in the past with costume characters for causes. We went as a group to the camp and we went to camp in costume for the day, and we would have fun with the kids, and like sometimes we'd do a dance with them or we'd help them build a birdhouse, and then we'd have lunch with them and hang out with them at one of their tables, and they were always so excited. Rogue, come over and sit with us. And we'd do their little camp things with them, and it was just a fun experience. And I know when I volunteered with costume characters for causes, usually Camp Good Times was the charity that we would raise money for. So I've always loved supporting Camp Good Times or the Good Times Project. And I think Amazon Smiles program, they're one of the charities that you can support through using smile.amazon.com. So I choose the Good Times Project as that charity. So I think a portion of whatever you buy on Amazon goes to the Good Times Project or
Cool. That's
something.
neat. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Of
Where
course.
can people find you? Like, what's the best place to find you online if they wanted to look at what you're doing?
I have Instagram, which is AbiSue Cosplay. I have Facebook, which is AbiSue Cosplay. And I have YouTube, which is AbiSue Costumes. I should probably switch everything, but I felt like when I started doing the historical stuff, costumes fit that better than cosplay, but
Yeah.
I didn't really feel like, you know, doing all the rest of the stuff, so I went with
Yeah.
costumes for
Cool.
YouTube. But if you look up AbiSue anywhere, you could probably just find me.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on again. And anyone out there watching this, tell us in the comments what you liked about the cosplays that she shared or the costumes she shared and what your favorite one is. And maybe something that you really like to do. Like, is it sewing? Is it like building? And share it in the comments and share this video with other people. And of course, don't forget to give it a like, a thumbs up, so we know that you liked what you saw today. And again, thanks again, AbiSue, for coming on. And remember, everyone, cosplay is for everyone.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.